Every family has a mistake, my mother posted together with a picture of my 9-year-old daughter. My dad and my sister both liked it. My daughter said, "That's me." I didn't cry. I took action. 3 days later, they received a letter and started screaming. It was supposed to be an ordinary Saturday lunch. Nothing special. Chicken roasting, sunlight slanting across the table, my husband pouring iced tea. For once the world was quiet, or it should have been. My daughter Astrid came out of her room when I called her. She looked fine at first, same soft dress, same careful braid, but there was something about the way she walked. Shoulders tight, chin tucked in, like she'd already been scolded for something I hadn't caught yet. She sat down without a word and stared at her plate. The silence hit me harder than any argument. Astrid was never chatty, but she was never this quiet. "Not hungry?" I asked, keeping my voice light. She shook her head, fork sliding between her fingers. My husband, ever the peacekeeper, tried next. "Hey, champ, you okay?" No answer. She moved a carrot across the plate like she was rearranging planets. The clock ticked. The smell of roast chicken thickened the air. I felt the hairs on my arms rise. Something was wrong, something already broken before we sat down. "Long morning?" I asked. "You look tired." Still nothing. I tried humor. That's what you do when panic's not allowed. "What, did I overcook the carrots again? I swear they were orange when I started." She didn't even smile. My husband gave me that look. Half worry, half don't push her right now. But the quiet was heavy, like the house was holding its breath. Then Astrid's fork clattered against the plate. She stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. "Astrid!" She was already walking down the hall. We listened to the footsteps fade, then come back. She returned holding her tablet pressed to her chest like a shield. Her eyes were red but dry. She set it on the table, pushed it toward me, and whispered, "That's me." The screen glowed between us. A photo of her from last month, one I'd posted privately, now sat on my mother's public page. The caption, "Every family has a mistake." Underneath, my father's thumbs up, my sister's little heart. I stared at the words until they stopped making sense. Then they made too much. Astrid's voice was quiet, flat. "Grandma's right." She turned and walked back to her room, closing the door softly, politely, like she was afraid of disturbing us further. For a moment no one moved. My husband broke the silence first. "What the hell is that?" My throat closed up. "It's—" I didn't even finish. My hands were shaking, but my voice wasn't, "It's what they really think." The kitchen suddenly felt too bright. The air smelled like burnt sugar. I stared at the tablet again, as if the caption might change if I blinked. "Maybe it's a joke," my husband said weakly. I almost laughed. "Then they should try stand-up. They'd kill." He didn't answer. I picked up the tablet and took a screenshot, one for the post, one for each like evidence. That's what you do when you've spent your whole life being told you imagined it. You keep proof. I stood up, walked to the counter, and dialed. Mom answered on the second ring. "Ada!" "Hi, sweetheart." Cheerful, like nothing had happened. "Take it down." "What?" "The post. Delete it." A pause. Then the sugar-coated tone that always meant trouble. "Oh, don't be dramatic, darling. It's just a saying." She saw it. She shouldn't be online unsupervised then. She's 9. Well, maybe if she behaved better. I hung up before she could finish. The click felt cleaner than I expected. Behind me, my husband exhaled. "You're not going to let this go, are you?" "No?" I scrolled again, reading every comment, every reaction, family friends laughing along, a few polite emojis. Nobody asked what kind of person calls a child a mistake. My hands felt steady now. Cold, but steady. I walked to Astrid's door and knocked. "Honey?" No answer. I opened it a crack. She sat on her bed, arms around her knees, the tablet face down beside her. "Do you want to talk about it?" I asked. She shook her head. "Okay," I said softly. "But you know that's not true, right? You're not a mistake." She looked up for the first time. Then why did she write it? Because cruelty never needs a reason. Because they did the same thing to me, just quieter. Because they can't stand anything that doesn't fit their script. I didn't say any of that. I just said, because she's wrong. She nodded once, as if filing it away, then whispered, "Can we block them?" "Yeah," I said. "We can." When I came back to the kitchen, the tablet still lay open on the table. The screen had gone dark, but the words burned behind my eyes. I opened my laptop, logged into every account, and started cutting ties one by one. Unfriend, block, delete. Each click sounded like a lock turning. My husband leaned against the counter. "You sure about this?" I looked at him. "They called our daughter a mistake, I'm sure." He nodded slowly. "What are you going to do?" I smiled. Thin, humorless. What I should have done years ago. I gathered every screenshot into a folder, saved copies to the cloud, printed a set for good measure. I wasn't thinking revenge yet. I was thinking permanence. From Astrid's room came the faint sound of a door closing, then quiet humming. For a second, I almost cried. From relief, not sadness. She was still herself. Still here. I sat down at the table, looking at the blank space where her plate had been, and felt the old version of myself, obedient daughter, quiet peacemaker, slip away like a skin that never fit. The next version of me was already forming. I turned off the light, looked once more at the glowing tablet, and whispered, "This ends here." 3 days later, they received a letter and started screaming. It wasn't the first time they'd called someone in our family a problem. It just took me 35 years to realize that in our house, being different was the real crime. I grew up the middle child. Proof that birth order can be a curse. My brother was the golden boy, my sister the baby, and me, the phase. If I was sick, I was faking. If I was quiet, I was sulking. If I tried to help, I was in the way. I learned early that you only got noticed when you messed up. By high school, I'd perfected invisibility with occasional flashes of trouble. People got angry at me, and I never knew why. Once I answered a question honestly, "No, I don't like group projects." And the room went dead. Apparently, truth sounds like attitude when it comes out of the wrong mouth. So I stopped asking what I'd done wrong and started assuming it was everything. When I was small, the only person who didn't treat me like a problem was my grandmother. She was the family's official odd one, which meant she was quiet, particular, and didn't bother pretending. She lined up her teacups by size, wore the same soft cardigan every day, and talked to me like I was a person, not a chore. They said she was eccentric. Later, when her memory slipped a little, they upgraded her to crazy. But she was the only one who ever looked at me and didn't sigh first. I think she saw something familiar, the same sharp edges she'd spent her life sanding down. After she died, Mom told me not to dwell on her stories. One of them was about the house, how she'd wanted me to have it one day. I was a teenager. I assumed she meant sentimentally, not literally. Mom called it a misunderstanding, just something she said at the end. I never saw the will, but sometimes I wonder if it wasn't a misunderstanding at all. When I became a mother, I thought I'd escaped all of it. The labels, the silence, the way love came with conditions. For a while, I believed I had. Then Astrid arrived, and the pattern came back wearing a smaller pair of shoes. Astrid arrived shining and literal and too smart for everyone's comfort. She could take apart a clock but couldn't tell if someone was joking. Teachers called her bright but intense. My parents called her just like her mother. I never knew which was supposed to be the compliment. From the start, she tried so hard to fit in, it hurt to watch. She studied other kids like an exam, when to laugh, how long to look. And when she finally relaxed, she got it wrong. Didn't answer a cousin fast enough, and suddenly she was snobby. She thought she'd failed the test. I knew she'd passed the pattern. Years of appointments followed. Labels thrown around like confetti, ADHD, anxiety, behavioral issues. Then one doctor spent more than 15 minutes with her and said the word no one else had. Autism. Not the kind people think they can spot. The kind you only see when you know where to look. High masking, they called it. Copying, scripting, pretending. Holding it together in public. Collapsing in private, I felt relief first. Then guilt so sharp it made my throat burn. If someone had given that word to the child I used to be, maybe I'd have turned out less apologetic. I told my parents, expecting, God knows why, understanding Mom laughed. "She talks fine," my sister said. "Everyone's autistic now." Then they compared her to a boy they knew who was nonverbal. "That's real autism. She just needs boundaries." I tried to explain masking. You can't see it because she hides it so you won't judge her. Mom waved a hand. "She's not hiding anything. You're making excuses." After that, they started performing generosity. "She's just spirited. She'll grow out of it." Every sentence another erasure. And when Astrid flinched at loud noises or refused scratchy clothes, they smirked like they'd caught her bluff. At dinner one night, Mom forced a hug on her. Astrid stiffened. Mom laughed. "See? She's dramatic. Just like you were." That word again. Dramatic. Family code for wrong in a way we don't care to understand. I bit my tongue till it hurt. She was 9. I was back to being 10. Later that night, Astrid asked, "Why does Grandma say I'm weird?" I told her, "Because she doesn't have another word for special." Dry humor's the only thing that keeps me from screaming. But the truth was simpler and sharper. They can't stand what they can't fix. And they can't fix what isn't broken. That was when I started keeping receipts, texts, comments, moments. Not because I planned revenge, but because I knew one day they'd pretend none of it happened. When Mom posted that photo, it didn't come out of nowhere. It was the punchline to a joke they'd been telling my whole life. They'd called me dramatic. Then they called Astrid defective. Different generation, same script. They made me the problem once. They weren't going to do it to her. That was the moment I stopped being their daughter and started being her mother. The morning after the post, I didn't cry. I made coffee, opened my laptop, and looked up property lawyers. By noon, I was sitting in front of one, Sabrina Holt. Calm, sharp, the kind of woman who looked like she'd never once apologized for taking up space. I admired that about her immediately. "I need to find a will," I said. "Or a copy of one." Sabrina didn't flinch. "Whose?" "My grandmother's. She told me once that her house would be mine. Everyone said she was confused, but I don't think she was. I think they lied." She leaned back, assessing me. "And you believe there's a legal document?" "I believe my family hides everything that doesn't fit their story," I said. So yes? Her smile was small but real. Fair enough. I can pull probate records and land title filings. If she left it to you, we'll find it. And then what? Then, she said, we make them give it back. I laughed. Short, sharp, a sound that startled even me. Good. I'm done asking nicely. Waiting for her call was torture. I cleaned things that weren't dirty. I checked the kettle 4 times to make sure it was off. My hands wouldn't stop moving. Every time I sat down, I saw that post again, the photo, the caption, the likes. My parents' faces, smiling in public while I stared at the proof that they'd called my daughter broken. The house became an obsession. Not for the bricks or the walls or the stupid floral wallpaper, for what it meant. That was where everything had started. The birthdays, the shouting, the years of being told I was dramatic, and before that, it was where my grandmother had lived, quiet and strange and kind. They'd taken her house. They weren't going to take her voice too. I looked around my kitchen, small, rented, safe Astrid's drawings on the fridge. One of them was a house too. The phone rang. Sabrina didn't bother with small talk. You were right, she said. The will's on file. Your grandmother left the house to you outright. Your parents were temporary trustees until you turned 18. They never transferred the deed. I closed my eyes. Of course they didn't. It's a clear breach, she continued. We can file for possession immediately. Do you want me to start the claim? Yes. Once they're served, they'll have 30 days to respond. But given the wording, they don't have a chance. Good, I said. Let's give them the paperwork before they start rewriting history again. 3 days after the post, I sat in Sabrina's car outside my parents' house. She walked up the path with a thick envelope in one hand and the confidence of a woman who has never once been talked over at a dinner table. I stayed in the car, window cracked, fingers drumming against the steering wheel. The air smelled like cut grass and fury. The door opened. Mom answered. Still in her perfect makeup and pastel sweater, Sabrina handed her the letter. For a second, Mom just blinked. Then she read the first line, and her whole body changed. Shoulders back, lips tight, chin shaking with outrage, Dad appeared behind her, took the letter, scanned it. He started shouting before he finished the second paragraph. I couldn't hear the words, but I knew the rhythm. Accusation, denial, insult, victimhood. The family's greatest hits. Mom's eyes found me through the windshield. She looked like she was seeing a ghost. Maybe she was. The quiet, obedient version of me had died with that post 3 days ago. Sabrina came back to the car, face calm, papers in hand. That went well, she said. I smiled. Better than Christmas. We pulled away while their voices still echoed down the driveway. The calls started before we reached the next street. First Mom, then Dad, then my sister. I ignored the first 5, answered the 6th. Mom's voice came through cracked with rage. You can't do this, Ada. She wasn't thinking straight when she wrote that will. She was the only one who ever did, I said. Dad shouted in the background. You'll ruin this family. You already did, I replied. Mom tried again, softer now. Do you even hear yourself? You're making us homeless. No, I said. I'm reminding you whose house you've been living in. You ungrateful... I hung up. The click was better than applause. That night, Astrid sat at the table drawing again. She didn't ask what had happened. She just looked up once and said, You look different. Do I? I asked. Yeah, she said. Not scared? I almost laughed. I'm not. Not anymore. She smiled faintly and went back to her sketch. The page was a small house surrounded by sky. I stood there a moment, watching her draw, feeling the air finally move through the room. Maybe this was rebellion. Not screaming, not smashing plates, just refusing to stay quiet when the truth was already loud. They'd spent my whole life calling me difficult. Now they could call me plaintiff. And honestly, I think that's progress. The envelope from Sabrina arrived on a Tuesday morning, thick, heavy, official-looking. I didn't even need to open it to know what it was. My parents had decided to fight back. They'd filed a counterclaim, saying my grandmother was mentally unfit when she left me the house. The same grandmother who paid their bills, cooked their dinners, and outlived most of her critics, Sabrina called before I'd even finished reading the letter. "They're claiming she was incompetent," she said. Her tone was calm, measured, like she was telling me the weather. "And?" I asked. "And they'll lose," she said. "But it's going to get ugly first." I laughed, though it came out too tight. "Ugly's fine. I was raised for it." The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork and whispers. Small towns don't need breaking news. They just need someone to break. Mom took the scenic route to self-destruction. She started by complaining at the church coffee hour, then moved on to the PTA. "She's trying to steal the house," she said, "and she's making up some disorder for Astrid to excuse her behavior." By the end of the week, half the town had heard that my daughter wasn't really autistic, and that I was the unstable one. At first, people nodded along. Some of them even meant well. I heard one parent say, "She talks fine. How bad can it be?" That's the problem with small towns. They'll hold a casserole fundraiser for you on Monday and gossip about you on Tuesday. Then I posted the truth. No long explanations. Just a copy of Astrid's official report, the screenshots of the post calling her a mistake, and a single caption, "This is what family looks like." I hit upload and closed my phone. By the time I checked again, it was on fire. Comments poured in. Teachers, parents, people I barely knew. One mother, whose son was nonverbal, wrote, "Autism looks different for everyone. You don't get to use our kids to mock yours." The tide turned fast. The same neighbors who used to wave at my parents in the grocery store suddenly couldn't make eye contact. The church quietly paused their volunteer positions. The PTA disinvited them from the next meeting. They wanted a crowd. They got a jury. Meanwhile, Sabrina built the case. She worked like a surgeon, every detail sharp, every cut precise. My parents' lawyer leaned on the eccentric equals unstable argument. "She lined up teacups," he said in court filings, as if that were proof of madness. Sabrina countered with bank statements, letters, and witness affidavits. "She was meticulous," she said, "and if that's a crime, we're all guilty." Every time I saw the paperwork, my chest felt like it was burning and freezing at once. This wasn't just about property. It was about rewriting the story they'd used to bury her and me, and now Astrid. Sabrina prepped me for court like I was going into battle. Stay calm, don't engage, let the facts do it. I nodded, pretending calm. Inside, I was on fire. The courthouse smelled like dust and disinfectant. The benches were full, neighbors, reporters, the curious, the hypocrites. My parents sat on the other side of the aisle, Mom in her pearls, Dad gripping his cane like a weapon. Their lawyer went first, repeating the same script. She wasn't stable. She arranged objects for hours. She couldn't make small talk. Sabrina stood up slowly, flipping through her folder. She balanced 3 bank accounts, managed her own taxes, and cared for 3 grandchildren. If eccentricity makes you unfit, half the county should lose their homes. Even the judge smiled. Just a flicker, but enough. Then Sabrina lowered the hammer. She wasn't crazy. She was autistic. There's a difference. And pretending otherwise is why this case exists. Mom's face went white. Dad's hand trembled. The judge didn't hesitate. Difference is not incompetence, he said. The will stands. The gavel dropped, sharp and final. Outside, the air felt different, thin and clean, like the first breath after a storm. They followed us out of the courthouse. Mom's voice cracked. You stole our home! I turned to her. It was never yours. Reporters caught it. The quote was in the local paper by evening. The next day, I walked into the grocery store and the woman at the bakery counter gave me a free muffin and a look that said, "Good for you." The world had shifted. Not much, but enough. Weeks later, I drove past the house. Moving trucks lined the driveway. Dad stood on the porch, staring at the ground. Mom barked orders that no one followed. Astrid sat beside me in the passenger seat, sketchbook on her lap. She glanced out the window. Is it really ours now? It always was, I said. She smiled, small but sure, and went back to her drawing. I watched her pencil move, steady, certain, and realized how long it had been since she looked nervous in her own skin, 3 generations they called broken. None of us were. The car idled, engine low and soft. I looked at the house one last time. They lost the house. We found our peace. So what do you think? Did I go too far or not far enough? Let me know in the comments, and subscribe for more.